Today is the 15th of November 2013. We're at the New York State Military Museum in Saratoga Springs, New York. My name is Wayne Clark. Sir, for the record, would you please state your full name and date and place of birth, please?
Yes, Thomas J. Smith, Jr., born June 4th, 1924.
And whereabouts were you born?
I was born in Schenectady, New York.
And did you attend school in Schenectady?
Yes, no, I didn't. I attended school in Albany, New York, a school called Vincentian Institute High School, Catholic school.
Okay. And what year did you graduate?
1942.
42. Do you remember where you were and what you were doing when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I remember it very well. My brother, myself, and my cousin were hanging out with a few girlfriends of ours in high school, and we'd been to a show and went back home and sat around listening to the radio, Glenn Miller and all that stuff, and all of a sudden there was screaming, Pearl Harbor's bombed, Pearl Harbor's bombed. Well, we got emotional, as kids would, and we swore vengeance at the time. So, of course, we didn't graduate at that time, we were still in school. So we decided we'd enlist after high school. And while we were in high school and graduating, I found out I had another half a year of eligibility. High school requirements were different then, I guess, and I had already played 3 years there. So I decided I'd finish that season out and then join the Marines. Well, in the meantime, I'd been rejected from the Marines because of my poor eyes. And my mother, as I say, God bless her, fed me carrots and carrot juice and everything. I actually turned a little jaundiced from it, but I still didn't pass the test. But one day I was in high school and I saw the Snellen eye chart. And so I memorized the chart. And I passed the test. So then my cousin John Bonzik was his name. He enlisted with me. He decided to go with us. And then we were, on November the 28th, we joined the Marines and were shipped to Parris Island.
Now let me ask you, why did you pick the Marines?
I don't know. It just kept hearing, reading stories about the Marines and the kind of soldiers they were. And of course, at that age, you're 18 and you're sometimes naive and whatnot. And the spirit there was, and I remember as a kid in Schenectady, things had happened that we met some Marines and parades and whatnot, and it's different than it was today. I remember playing ball with Sandlot ball, and at 12 o'clock Memorial Day, the whistles would blow, trains would stop, everyone would stand at attention for 5 minutes and honor. So we were taught to be loyal to our country and love our country.
Sure.
So it was embedded in us. So anyway, to continue, I decided to get a job, and my dad worked for the American Locomotive Company. And
Now, had he been a veteran of like?
no, he wasn't.
Okay.
His brother was in World War I.
Okay.
But I decided I'd like to do something, and he was in charge of the motor shop, which they converted to tanks, tank making, and he was in charge of 3 shifts. So I got a job at night from 11 to 7, and then I went to school during the day. And the pay was pretty good of those. I remember my first check was $125
Wow.
in those days, which was pretty good.
Sure.
So after finishing the season, for 3 years we had been a championship team, but the 4th year was the worst season we ever had. We didn't do a thing. So once we enlisted, we were sent to, down from Albany down to Parris Island, South Carolina.
Now, was that your first time away from home?
Yes, it was, first time. And I always remember that. We got down to Parris Island, and they loaded us up in trucks, and we entered the gates. They were all yelling, "You'll be sorry, you'll be sorry." And we found out why. 10 minutes later, they drove us over to the barber shop, and they took our hair off just like they were shoning sheep. We were bald-headed. And then, of course, you learned a new language and everything else, like pokey bait was candy, and the scuttlebutt was talk, and coffee was Joe. Your boots were boom doctor, so it was a new language to us.
Yeah.
So we had quite an experience here, learning all the arts of warfare, the rifles, machine guns, pistols, grenades.
Now, how long was that training for?
It was about, as I remember, about 18, 19 weeks at the time.
Oh, was it?
It was tough, it really was. They took you out to the rifle range and you had to snap in, as they called it, and we spent 2 weeks out there. practicing all the weaponry and whatnot, and then you had to qualify. At the end of that time, we were given jobs to do, and my platoon was sent to the kitchen. And I ended up, well, my buddies ended up peeling potatoes and carrots and serving as busboys, and I ended up being in the steam room washing all the dishes and whatnot.
Oh.
So we got through there, and everyone was given a leave. And there were 20 of us, as I remember, 25, that weren't given leave. So I asked why we weren't getting leaves, and they said, well, the Raiders need replacements. They'd gone through Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Bacon, and said, okay. So they shipped us to North Carolina while they all went home. Well, we never got a leave in all the 3 years I was in the service.
Wow.
But that was a new experience too, because it was cold in it. I remember February, and there was thin layers of ice on the creeks and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So they had us up at 5:30 in the morning. We'd take they were cardboard huts, we called them. And it was so cold, and they had a little kerosene lamp light. So we'd take our clothes and line them up in the bunks, and newspaper, everything to keep warm. Well, came up with the idea one day at 5:30, no one could see anything, so we made a deal. When we fell out, you couldn't see anyone. So we'd yell, here, 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 and we decided a couple of them could sleep in for an extra hour. So we took turns beating the system. So it was pretty good. While I was in there, I was surprised. They had parachuters. I didn't know that in the Marines at the time. So the parachuters were running all over, and they were practicing landings off New River, North Carolina. Well, while I was there, I'm getting ready to ship out, the Raiders were disbanded. And I was signed to the 4th Marine Division.
Now you had completed the
I
Raider
completed the training. I was all ready to go to California.
Now, how intense was that training?
That was pretty intense, it really was. They got us up, marched at the chow hall,
Mm-hmm.
and we got back. We had hand-to-hand fighting, knife fighting, bayonet fighting, grenades crawling under barbed wire fence while machine guns were going over your head. I remember running out. We had to run a couple miles. Came to creeks. They had ropes hanging from trees, swing out. You couldn't get over the other side. They'd drop into cold water. So it was intense, and the phrase came out, kill or be killed, and that's what we were there for. So it was quite interesting. As a young kid, truly, you don't know what you're looking for, but we enjoyed it. We had a good time doing it. So how physically fit we were.
Now, were you issued one of those Raider-type knives?
I had 2 knives, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And my dad, as a matter of fact, my dad sent one, K-Bar, I remember the name, one, and that was the only one in the outfit that had 2 knives. So it was interesting training. But as I say, we were heading out to California, and they started the 24th Marines were organized there on the way out to California. And we arrived there, and we went to Camp Pendleton. And then, of course, at that time, the Raiders were disbanded, and a lot of people might not know this, but Elliott Roosevelt, President Roosevelt's son, was the exec officer for the Carlson Raiders.
Oh, he was? Okay.
He was. And before they were disbanded, they had 5 Raider outfits, and he became the colonel in charge of the 5th Raider outfit. And of course, they disbanded us and they dispersed them all, and Carlson became the executive planning officer for the 4th Marine Divisions. A little story later about him. But we got good training again there at Camp Pendleton. We had to do the same thing over again. The only difference was we had marches out there. Now, Camp Pendleton was a ranch a family out there owned, and it was like 30 miles long, and the Marines took 20 miles of that, and they had their landings there, boat training. Our marches were 5, 10, 15, and 20, and I remember we had a forced march one time, we'd gone on maneuvers, and it sticks in my mind. Our company commander, Frank Garrison, hell of a good Marine, and he said, we're going to break the record. It was 28 miles away. Now, we'd been on the maneuvers. We had a double knapsack on. I was a machine gunner at the time, the assistant really, and I had to carry that machine gun on my back.
Now, what kind of machine gun was that?
It was air-cooled, 30 caliber air-cooled.
The heavy one.
It was heavy. And we made that, as I remember, in something like a little over 9.5 hours, 28 miles. And of course, they were trying to get 2 to 3 miles a mile with full pack. And we got back, he said, I got a surprise for you. You all have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. I don't think there were 15 of us went on Liberty because everyone had blisters and everything else retired. But it was interesting. Pendleton was between San Diego and Los Angeles. And of course, we'd like to go to Los Angeles. And the train started in San Diego. By the time it got through Oceanside, there wasn't any room, so you had to use your thumb. This is another story. But I went up to Los Angeles 2 or 3 times, and my buddies, 3 of them were married. So we'd go visit the wives, and they'd cook meals for us. One time, we couldn't get a ride back. We were using our thumb. And I know 3 of us got back, roll call was at 8. We got back about 9:30. And we had to go before the captain. And prior to that, we had had our maneuvers. And while we were out on maneuvers, I was out doing some scouting work and came back. And my group was standing around a stranger to me, and he was asking questions. They were giving the questions. And I walked up to him and said, "What the hell are you doing? Spilling your guts out to that guy." I didn't know who he was. It turned out he was our battalion commander. Now, truthfully, I never paid attention to the officers. My officer, my company commander, and the platoon leaders. I never met them before. But recapping the next day, everybody was laughing about the story. But my company commander came to my rescue. He knew my name was Thomas Jones, so he called me TJ. He said, "It's okay, TJ. You did right. You didn't know them. These guys were spilling their guts out, so I commend you for it." Now, going back to the trip, that was our first relationship. He said, I'm not going to write you fellas up, but I'm going to give you a duty. Go out and police the area for an hour. Well, police the area meant picking up cigarette butts.
Sure.
It was spotless. So an hour we took a walk around, came back, reported back to him. He said, "Okay, get back to your platoon." But he was that kind of a man.
Now, when you were on these weekend passes, did you get to go to any USO shows or
Yeah, I went
anything
to
like
one
that?
USO. I didn't. There were 2 incidents happened where I met family. I never got to leave. But my cousin Johnny Bonzik, he was in ordnance, and he was somewhere in California working on artillery pieces. So we contacted each other. We met at the USO show there, and I remember seeing Dinah Shore. She was a star then. And but there were a lot of stars. I don't remember the names.
Yeah.
But they waved it out. This is served the drinks, so that was nice. There was only one other time I was there with another friend of mine, Johnny Patchen from Brooklyn. He was killed later in action, but we sat there and there were, I'm trying to think of some of those names, but they don't come back to me. But the young lady waited on us, and they invited us to her home, her mother and father. And she took us to, said, "Take them to this restaurant." Well, in Hollywood, they had their special restaurants, and I can't remember all the names. But she took us to one of the famous ones, and there were a couple of stars in there, so we had a nice night meeting them. I did one time meet, later on, Tony Curse is when the name came to my mind.
Oh, really? Wow.
And trying to think, I think one of them was John Wayne at one time, and let's see, Powell.
Oh, Dick Powell?
Yeah, Dick Powell.
Okay.
And there were some pretty nice stars in there. They were very good for us. But that was the last trip after that. My one buddy, who was an ammunition carrier for me, in Oceanside, there was a little, I'll tell the story, a motel. He had his wife there. And the owner of the motel didn't have any legs. He had lost both legs, and he was on a scooter board. So they invited me down, and we'd go down and play pinochle with them. And they'd fix a meal for us, we'd lay on the beach. So it was a nice experience for them. After that, of course, then we were assigned to action there in the 4th Marine Division at that time, set forth 3 records. It was the first unit to go from directly to the United States into combat. We were going to the Marshall Islands. They had 4 major operations in 13 months, including Iwo Jima. And they were the first ones out of the Pacific, incidentally, too. So it did set some good records that way, and the boys were good. The men I served with, they were a good class of men, straight. One thing I like to say, I can't understand this. I see all the movies, the heroes are up there charging, and I watched that Pacific show that was on TV, and I heard a lot of swearing words, cursing, and I couldn't understand that because in my 3 years, I never heard a Marine swear.
Really?
All I heard them say is, "Damn it." That's the most I ever heard. And they're all that kind of people. They're good, religious, and I watched that show and it upset me because I heard words that we hear in the street here.
But not one Marine that I heard 3 years use the Lord's name or use a swear word, the F word, or the O's.
Yeah.
And they're good boys.
Now, when did you end up going overseas?
That was February 1st and 2nd of 1944.
44.
Yeah.
And you went directly
Directly
to
into
the Marianas?
Yeah. Now, the Kwajalein Atoll, as I mentioned more earlier, is a refueling station for the Pacific. It ran 60 miles long by 20 miles wide. They had something like 800 reefs in it. And it was shaped like a horseshoe. And at the end of the curve at the horseshoe was Roy and Namur. It was an airfield in Roy, and Namur had the ammunition dumps, and they had the barracks for the men. So the 23rd Marines took the airfield, with 24th, the outfit I was given the job, we were the first to land. And that's what it was. We were the first to land on mandated Japanese territory. So, in the first wave, I hit the beach, and there was not a blockhouse, but an ammunition supply building. And it was quite large. And I was sent with my machine gun out to the right flank, because the ocean was there and no one could come around. As we were working on it, that ammunition building blew up. And you could put a half an LST in it. That's how deep it was, full of water before. And I'd say about a quarter of my company was killed right there. So I got hit in the back with a piece of shrapnel. Fortunately, I was there and I felt a bang and felt hurt. And my buddy Garrett said to me, "Are you all right?" I said, "Why is your blouse is torn?" Well, it ricocheted, it turned black and blue as well, but we stayed there that night. And General Gates was our commanding general, and he said, "Stay where you are tonight, dig in." So we dug in. The next morning, his words, "Let's get the hell off this island." So we finished the island, and on the way, we were held up by a machine gun. I ran into one of the other Marines by the name of Tom Kotick, who was quite a Marine. And we were going forward, and he mentioned the fact that there was a machine gun there, and it was holding up the line. So we decided to take it out, and I said, "You go to the left, I'll go to the right." So we did, and took out some riflemen and threw grenades there, and that released the front lines to go forward. He ended up getting a Silver Star for that. Medals were given out, but I don't know, I was naive as a young fella. I never put in a free for the medals. My big medals would be coming out alive, and I know we had an opportunity to do that. The Marines we deserved it, not on them. But I remember the company commander saying, "Anybody who did these things, write it up." But the group I was with, we never wrote anything up. We just decided what is the medal. We were that naive. We were just there to fight for our country. So after that, we went back to Maui. Maui was our advanced station for training. Beautiful island. So we trained there for a while, and our replacements came, and the next operation was going to be Saipan and Tinian and Mariana Islands. And the way the Pacific was, you had Hawaii, you had Midway up here, and then you had straight across Marshall Islands, the Mariana Islands, Guam, Tinian, Saipan, and then Iwo Jima. That was our course. So of course the other guys went the southern route, God bless them. They had more hell than we did, I think. But we left there after a few months of training and went to the Marianas. Well, Saipan was the capital at the time, and about 4 miles to one side was Tinian. The two were coexisting together. Saipan had 20-some thousand Japanese on it, in a big town. Well, there's Garapan was a big town, and Sharikano was another town. Well, we were in reserves in that operation, and actually, the beach was miles long, and the left side, as I remember it, got in 300 or 400 yards. Back to where we landed, it was right in the water. And we had to spend the day there. We got in at about 4 in the afternoon. Well, we couldn't advance because they were bombing the shore. And we went in maybe 30, 40 yards. And we couldn't figure out how accurate they were. We dug in and had to spend the night there. And they were just devastating my company. As a matter of fact, I remember 2 kids again. One boy's name was Gravina. He dug a foxhole about 4 or 5 feet away from me, he and his buddy. They were both from Brooklyn. They were always arguing about the ball teams. And one liked the Giants, one liked the Dodgers. And they were that close. Well, I'll tell you how accurate it was. They put a shell right in our foxhole. there's nothing left. But we stayed there that night, took the punishment, and found out that the sugar factory had a big stack up there, a chimney. They had an observation tower in there. And he was directing the shells for the artillery straight into our foxholes.
Oh.
And we lost about a third of our company there. So after we got word to move in, we did, and of course Saipan had to be divided in half. They had an airfield, a Salado airfield, on the right side, and the third on the left. No, I guess it was the second. The second went up to the left side, we went up to the right side. Well, when we cut the island in half, they brought in the 27th Army, and they were in the middle now. So as we moved up Saipan, we had 2 Marine divisions and the 27th in the middle. Well, as I mentioned, when you can imagine this, you've got a straight line across the island, regardless of what it is, and you push forward. And at night when you stop, for the night you dug in, well, now my radar training came in handy because I was with the Raiders, I say, and I was sent out to establish what they call outposts. And between our lines and their lines, I would go out maybe 100, 200 yards to sit for the Japanese and spend 3 or 4 hours out there. And like, many times, like near Shericano or Carapan, I could hear the people talking, raising cane, drinking, everything else.
But you didn't have anybody that spoke Japanese with you, did you?
We had 1 or 2 interpreters,
Okay.
but not in my group. So, well, sorry, we put in that first night, when the first time I went out, the group next to me was tired and they did their work, and they were asked to go out to the outpost. And one kid was wounded and they were reluctant, so I said, well, I'll take my group out. We went out. Got out about 100, 200 yards, and it was flat in the town. And we laid in the rows that they had the vegetables and whatnot, and we could hear them talk and whatnot. Finally, we were about 3 hours, and I said, well, let's go back. So on the way back, about halfway, my rifleman said to me, TJ, he called me TJ, who's behind me? And I said, well, we're in a diamond shaped formation. I said, well, I'm in front, so-and-so's on the left, so-and-so's on the right, you're in the back. And he says, I hear something, I keep hearing something. And I said, well, if they hit us, we'll just have to handle it, so just keep moving. Well, before we went out, it was getting dark, and of course, if you're out there and you're coming back, the worry is your own men are going to shoot you. So I was worried about it, so there was a 37 millimeter sitting over there, and I walked up to him and said, look, I've got to go out here, and I'm going to come back here, but I want you to know this. This is the password tonight, but I'm going to add something to it. So if anybody uses that after I come in, you'll know there's not ready. So he said, what are you going to say? And you won't believe this. I forget the first part of the password. I said, I'm going to add Schenectady. And the kid says, how do you say that? I did this. I said, Schenectady. Oh, okay. So we went out. So we came back, gave the password, and we dug a foxhole next to him, so we got our foxhole. And about an hour later, wham, wham, 30 millimeters going off. And got up the next morning, there was a little road that came into the area, and on the road there were 20 Japanese dead. They had followed us in. They must have known we were there, because they knew where we were. So one of those things that could have killed us any time they wanted, I felt. So what they had is they had gasoline cans, waste. They were trying to get back to our lines, I guess, and get that at our tanks. But that was another story there. Well, we moved on from there. And as we went up to Bain Island, Saipan, there's a magnificent bay, they called it. We got word that they might have some Tinian reinforcements. So our lieutenant commander, not lieutenant, rather, Sporto was his name, he and I took the group out and set up a perimeter there, waiting for it, but they never showed up. The next thing I can remember going up Saipan was we had made pretty good progress, and we got up in about the middle of Saipan, and we ran into, now there's a Mount Tapacho up there overlooking the mountain thing. It was 1,500 feet tall, something like that. And before you reached it, there was what they called Purple Heart Ridge, Death Valley, and Death Valley was like a horseshoe again, all vegetation and trees. Now, part of the island was flat for farming, cane and whatnot, and that ridge was Purple Heart Ridge. Well, I was asked to tie in are out to find them because they lagged behind. The 27th was coming off. They took care of that peninsula. So I took my group over, and I was the tie-in with that group. And the rest of the division was to the right. As we sat there talking to them and whatnot, everything was fine. Well, the next day, we pushed off, and up on the ridge, there was some machine gun nests in our zone, and my group took them out. Looking down into the valley, the 27th went in, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Of course, you could only see partially, but they went in charge. They ran in, and all hell broke loose. Machine guns, mortars, and everything else. It was really a death trap in there. They got trapped. Well, you could see them carrying the men out, so my men were up at the top, and I said, now cover us as best as you can. I've got to go back down and see what we can do. So I went down, and sure enough, a lot of wounded and dead. And I happened to see a couple Army boys, I'm going to say maybe 20 yards in. So I went in, I tried to get in there, and it couldn't. It was machine gun fire. So I got in my belly, and I wiggled my way up there, truthfully. And I managed to catch one of the Army boys who was wounded in the shoulder. I dragged him out and took him back down and just started back up again, and a couple of Army boys came along with me. And there was an outcropping, and you couldn't get through, you had to crawl. So I said, why don't you sit here and in this area, see if you can't just shoot like hell so we can draw some attention away. So they did. Well, this other fellow and I went and got the other two out. So they thanked me, and then I joined my company again. That was just one incident. After that, we did the same thing over and over. It was routine, the same thing every day. We finally came on the other side where Tapacho was, and it was down, and our side was pretty flat. And we were tying it again, and Frank Garrison called me over and said, Tom, TJ, take your group out and see what you can find out again, but be careful because that's a tough area with mountains. It's going to be an objective very shortly. So anyway, we started out, and that's about 4 again. Started up the mountain. We found the mountain trail, went up, and now I'm going to backtrack. For a number of days while we're fighting in Saipan, we're seeing the Japanese and we're shooting them. We got there were no Japanese. And we got to Shenandoah, and we were street fighting. No Japanese, and we saw them fall. Well, one of the guys happened to look down in the cistern. They were dropping the Jap dead in the cistern. They were pulling them back, playing psychological war with us. So when I started up Mount Tamacho, now this is a varied story. There are 2 or 3 different versions with different people, but you see it as you see it. I started up the path with my group, and the place stunk. And there were hundreds of dead Japs laying on the side of the mountain, the trail, full of maggots and everything else. So we tipped through the thing, and I'm not exaggerating, there must have been 200 or 300 Japanese laying there all over the mountain. And I guess they thought the mountain was their god or whatever it is, sacred mountain. Well, we managed to get up to the top before it got dark. It was twilight. And it was peaceful, it was quiet, just like in a church. And you couldn't dig a hole to spend the night. And it was already dark, and I said, here we are, we're stuck again. So we have to spend the night up here. Now, the Japanese are controlling that mountain on the other side, and we're on this side. So we spent the night there. And about 6, 7 in the morning, as I remember, shells started dropping in on us. And I said, hey, that's coming from the rear. So I said, let's get out of here. And we ran into where the shells were coming from. And sure enough, the 27th Army was there, and ran into a lieutenant. I said, what the hell's going on? He said, that's our objective today. And I said to him, yeah, I got a surprise for you. We've been up there all night, and we're getting shelled. And he said to me, he said, well, how the hell did I know you were up there? I said, you're right, you didn't. So anyway, that was their objective that day. And so we moved on from there.
Now, what did you think of the 27th Division?
You know,
I know there was bad blood between the two generals.
Everybody has their own opinion of that, and it was tough. Now, I guess maybe I'm one of the odd ones. I have 8 buddies I meet with, all not buddies, but I met one here after the war. I moved back to Schenectady and Glenville. And I ran into a fella who was in the Marines. He was on Iwo Jima. He was wounded. And eventually, it turned out there were 8 of us in this area. So we'd meet for coffee now and then. Well, most of them feel that 27th did a lousy job. I mean, they didn't advance because they had a banzai attack, whatnot. But when I tied in with them, what they seemed to forget, we were in flatland. You had Purple Heart Ridge, which was a big ridge. It had to be 300 or 400 feet high. You had the valley, and they were in that area. And they could not advance like we advanced. Most Marines were, well, 200, 300, 400 yards ahead of them, sometimes a half a mile. But tying in with them, I had a different view of it. They could have advanced, I suppose, but they didn't. But in the meantime, their terrain was more rugged than we did. Well, during one of the escapades, we lost a lot of men, but they had a banzai attack. The banzai attack came straight through the 27th. And they ended up a mile or two back to the artillery. That's how bad it was. Everybody was getting shot and killed. So I see it in a different place. They had a tougher job than we did at that moment. We had tougher jobs than them at other places. But my buddies take the other viewpoint. They say they should have gone and they should have did this and that. But I give them credit. I mean, we could go here, the other side could go there, but here they're in the middle like an inverted horseshoe. They couldn't go through a mountain, so they had to get skirts and go in these valleys. So, no, I appreciated what they did, but that was a different version. Anyway, when we got through Saipan, we were near the end, and we'd already taken everything. And I remember I got to the end with my group before most people did. And there were cliffs hanging there, and we got around one side, and we tried to talk to some women that were there, and they had soldiers, the big cliffs, caves, and everything else in it. And the soldiers were forcing them to jump off the cliff.
The Japanese soldiers.
And they were throwing babies over the side and everything else. And I was screaming at them. And some other Marines came over, they had a megaphone. They tried to convince them not to do it, but I don't know how many hundreds went over the cliff. They were throwing babies all over, women. And then the soldiers are committing their hara-kiri, I guess, that way. But that was Saipan. So we had a week off from Saipan, recuperated. I've got a few pictures, I should have brought them. I went in after playing football at 175 pounds. They took a picture of me, I weighed 120 at the time. I'd lost that much weight. But we rested, and we got word that our company again was going to be first wave the second time. And we went over to Tinian, and it was just like Tarawa. There was only 60 yards of they've had a feigning exercise at the other end of the island, but what they picked out was for about 60 yards, a little cliff and vegetation. But when they dropped us off, we were maybe a half a football field from the land. And as you jumped in the water, you couldn't get in because of the coral rock and whatnot. And I remember jumping in up to my ankles, the water up to my waist, up to my armpits, and finally hit the bottom of it. Got pictures of Marines holding their rifles up like this because you were up to here in water. So we had a wave in. We didn't have any opposition. So we got in, established our front line, and moved forward. And again, I was sent out as an outpost, found a nice, comfortable place, vegetation. We had about 3 or 4 hours, and I heard Amtrak trailers, everything coming. So I had to report back and say we were going to get the enemy. Well, we did in about an hour after I got back. We had a banzai attack. We lived through that, and then we started up. We didn't have much opposition.
How bad was that attack? Was that?
It wasn't bad. There were about 300 or 400 dead Japanese the next morning we got up.
Were there any civilians mixed in
There
with
were
them?
civilians at that time. At the other banzai attacks, they did have them. Like on Saipan, there were a couple hundred civilians first. They put them in front of them, made them go, and of course, it's dark when they did it, so you're shooting into civilians. You didn't realize that, but we advanced to a point where, again, I had to go out a couple more times to establish these outposts. And this is a true story. I hate to say it, but I'll say it. After 3 or 4 times on Tinian, the problem I had was when we fought all day long, and I went out for 3 or 4 hours, I came back. No one ever said to go to the back and sleep. You grabbed 2 hours of sleep and you went again. So it went on that way, and I was tired, and I don't mind saying it. In a couple operations, I slipped on the Higgins boat going into the landings. I got back, and I reported what was going on, and didn't hear anything. I got in the foxhole with 4 guys and Marines, and I said to them, this was a habit I had. I said, look, I'll take the first watch. If I come back, whoever's there will relieve you. Because if I put in an hour and it's your turn, I'm not going to get up. So I did. I reported, it's been about 30 minutes, I'm tired, you take over. I slept. Next morning I woke up, and I'm not exaggerating, there were 100, 200 dead Japanese all over the field out in front of us. I looked up and said, what the hell happened? And the guy looked at me and the Marine said, we thought you were dead. I said, well, why didn't you wake me up? He said, we really thought you were dead. All the shooting going on,
my God, and you
and
slept
so-and-so kicked you once, and you never woke up. It was a true story. So,
Wow.
but anyway, my company commander said after that it was a cakewalk. Well, we got to the end, and I don't know the distance, but let's say it was maybe a half mile to a mile. And he said again, TJ, take your group out, be careful, and see if you can find anything out. Well, I did. And they say Tinian had the beach in the water, and we were in that area. Then you went in about 50, 60 yards, and there was a cliff, a level, then another one. And the Marines up there were looking down on us. But I took my group out, and got to the end of the island. On the way out, I noticed on one of the cliffs there seemed a lot of trees, and I said to them, on the way back, we'll check that out. Well, we got to the end, didn't see any Japanese in it, and we came back, and lo and behold, this immaculately dressed man is standing there with a pair of field glasses looking out at the sea. When he turned and saw me, I had my rifle up, I was going to shoot him. He indicated I could have the glasses. He wanted to swap his life, I guess. So I motioned to him to get down to the ground. He got down, walked up to him and asked if he spoke English. And he said, yes. I said, where'd you learn it? He said, Southern California. Now, I don't know if that was true or not, but that's what he told me. So I said to him, there's a cave in there. Tell your men to come out. He said, they're going to die for the emperor. And I asked him, I said, why don't you die for the emperor? And he told me, you think I'm a damn fool, just like that. I said, all right, you stay on your stomach, and if you move an inch, I'm going to shoot you. So we had a battle there for the cave, and grenades were going back and forth. One of them came out, and the fellow Marine I was next to, hit right above his head, went back into the cave. Well, they committed hair carrier, we killed him. Well, we went in the cave, and of course, you're looking for souvenirs and that. I never looked for many souvenirs, I didn't care for them. But there were two suitcases. And one of the fellows picked the suitcases up, we took them out, we opened them up. They're full of yen. I mean, Japanese yen. We took and looked at him. I'm the paymaster for the Central Pacific. I said, wait a minute. First, you're Vice Admiral Koko Kujo, who's the commanding officer for the 1st Air Fleet. And of course, all your airplanes were defeated at Saipan, the big battle out there with the Navy, and you're defeated here. He said, well, the money's mine. And I said, okay, it's not yours anymore. So we took him back, turned him into my company commander.
Now, you had a photograph of that man.
Yeah, I ruined it by putting the operations I was on.
But if you'll take and hold those photos up right in front of you, I think I can zoom in on them. Okay. Oh, that bill's upside down. Okay. Yeah, if you just
This way?
yeah, it was upside down. Okay, got it.
Okay.
And then you've got a picture of the fellow you
Yeah, I
captured.
this is the picture here.
Now, did you take his documents? I mean, was that?
Now, I'll have to tell you a story with that. When I took them back and turned them in, I had the suitcases. I gave them to the guys in the front lines. I said, listen, I know you want souvenirs.
Yeah, I can't get the print in,
Oh, okay.
but I got the picture of
Okay.
him.
So I said, you're afraid of taking souvenirs and whatnot. And I said, here's something that's safe. You can take a picture. I kept one. And a runner came running over and said, TJ, they want you back at command post. They want the money. Well, I took the two suitcases back and said to Captain, then Garrettson, what's up? He says, he's a very high official, as you know, and we're sending him back to Pearl Harbor. That's what I was told by battalion commander. And he wants the money, and he says he'll cooperate 100% if we give him the money. And the general said, he became the General Garrettson, and he said to me, TJ, he thinks he's going to take the money and deposit in Switzerland. We're going to work with them. So after the war, you can have the money. That was a crazy story, but that's what they told me. Well, anyway, that was the end of the story until I found out he tried to get off the island 5 times. It's in this record. 5 times they tried to get him off, and they had subs out there waiting for him. But he couldn't get through our lines. So that was his last attempt. He was trying to find out if the subs were out there. So that was a story of Kojo. And
Now,
over the
do
years...
you know if he
No,
survived
after
the war?
years, this is true.
Okay.
After years now, since then, I've tried for 30 years or better to find out what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
I sent for my records, and my records were lost a couple of times. Like when I was in Marshals, I went out to the hospital ship, and they treated me, and they were taking me back to Pearl Harbor, and I asked them, "Doctor, can I go back to my company?" He said, "Sure, as long as you report back to the Battalion H station when you get home to Maui." So I did, and in the meantime, somehow they transferred my records, and when I got back, they didn't have the records in Maui. And as a matter of fact, I didn't get paid for 3 months, and my buddies were taking care of me as far as going to slop shoot and getting the beer and whatnot. But it was strange. And on top of this record I got 3 different records, and each of them had staples in them. The staples holes were there, but nothing behind the record. And one said confidential on it, and one said caution on it. And I couldn't figure out why that would be, so I've been trying for over 30 years to find out what was behind it, and I get the runaround. So I don't know what happened to that, but I tried to find out about him, and I finally got together with the my general. He said, "Tom, myself, when I talk to you, I try to find out, and I can't find out myself what happened to him." So something happened when they sent him back to Pearl Harbor. But that's the story of the Vice Admiral. But another story, and it's here in this little article. When they were cleaning up Tinian, a group was going out cleaning after we left, and it says here in the article that one of his aides, I don't know where his aide was, if they were in a cave and we killed him, was leading a group out around the island, or scouting the island, and they were looking for him. And they said, well, he was out at a cave. Well, they came out to that cave, and it was silent, so they just blew the cave up. They didn't say they went in it or whatnot, but that's in the article about this Vice Admiral. So, but I've tried to find out about him. Well, after Tinian, we went back to Maui again and did our training prior to going to Iwo Jima. Well, after a few months there, we set sail for Iwo. And in the meantime, as I say, I'd been a machine gunner, I was a rifleman, I was group leader, did a lot of scouting work. I got a promotion. They decided to make me recreation officer, so to speak, and in charge of mail and stuff like that. So I had my own tent and had all the mail sacks, and had a good time doing it. Of course, my buddies are there, and it's nothing to do with the war. But I got ptomaine poison once back at the camp. A little side story. They were serving Spam, believe it or not, and they warmed it up, and talked to the company commander one day, and I said, "Why are we eating sea rations? They're warming sea rations up for us, which had beans and whatnot in it, and Spam." And across the gully was a Navy unit, some unit. And I went over there one day, and they were having steak, they were having stew, and we're here, and he said, "Well, all I can tell you, Tom, is we're under the Navy, and they're training us for combat." So anyway, I ate that one day, and I ended up with ptomaine poison, ran to the battalion. They shipped me to a hospital. There must have been 50, 60 beds in the ward, and I was the only one there. Well, I had, with ptomaine poison and whatnot, you should go to the bathroom. Well, they finally put me to sleep. They woke up the next morning, every bed was filled with my company.
Oh, really?
They all got the same thing. So I didn't eat in the mess hall anymore, but the cooks and I were friends. And when they would serve officer's mess, on the way back, they'd stop at my tent, and they'd give me maybe a hamburger or something fresh. And one time, another story, the back gate to Maui, we were up on half the volcano there in Maui. It's the largest active volcano in the world. There's a little village, about 10 stores, and I walked into one day, and there's a lot of dust all over these canned goods. And I looked, there was a jar of pickled pig's feet from the United States. And I said to the owner, how long have you had these? Oh, about 4 or 5 years. No one wanted to pickle pig's feet. Well, they was after me, told me poisoning things. I said, I'll buy it. I guess I gave them a quarter for it, so I had pickled pig's feet on Maui.
And they were still good.
But anyway, we headed out to Iwo Jima, and we had to stop at Saipan. Meantime, I got a letter from my mother saying that my uncle he was in World War I and had a destroyer. And he's a family now. He's got a kid who's serving in World War II. But he wanted to serve in the service. He tried to enroll in the Navy. They wouldn't take him. But he joined the Seabees. They took him. So he ended up being in Saipan doing the construction work there. And the battalion mail clerk was going by, and we were looking at the island. And I said to him, where are you going, Paul? He said, I got to take mail baggage. I got 4 sacks. I said, well, it takes 2 men to carry those 4 sacks, so I grabbed 2 of them. We went inside, and they told us we had a half hour to deliver the mail and come back. We got to the post office, and I asked the clerk there, I said, do you know Ed Miller? That was the name, Ed Miller. He said, yeah, he's about a half mile down the road, and there's a barracks there. He said, here's my keys, take the jeep. So I drove down, sure enough, Uncle Ed was there. He got hurt in the back, he was laying in his sack. We talked for a little while. He looked at me, he dragged me down to the mess hall, and he had to go put a goodie bag together, fresh bread and everything. I said, what are you doing? I don't have time for that. He said, you need some weight. And he said, I don't even recognize you. I had dropped so much weight. But anyway, we got back to the ship. It was the only one I ever saw for the family. So we went on to Iwo, and of course, Iwo was a different story altogether.
Is that where you were wounded?
I meant, as part of my story in Saipan, I'll go back to it. On one of the excursions I was at, I came back, and this is an important story to me anyway. We were tied in, the company was tied in, and I spent the night someplace else in the day, and I came back, and they were all lined up in their foxholes, and I noticed the machine gun crew I used to be with. I started walking up and down, and without knowing it, there was a ridge to the left. I knew the ridge was there, but it ended, and a tank came around the corner. And evidently he thought I was an officer going from foxhole to foxhole. I got in front of the foxhole, and standing on the parapet, I looked in and started talking to the fellas, and the tank dropped a shell right in the middle of the foxhole. And of course, it killed the 4 men in there, and I got wounded again. Well, they treated me, I was never evacuated. They treated me and got wounded in a piece of shack. They fixed it up, and everybody was yelling. I remember vaguely when the concussion, I didn't have my helmet strap on. They blew my helmet straight up, and I reached up unconsciously and grabbed it. And all my buddies tell me later, it was sad, but it was also funny when they saw all the smoke and 2 hands reach up and grab their helmet and pull it down. But they were yelling, and so I ran to the ridge with them, and then we took off for the tank. We got there just in time to throw some hand grenades at it. Didn't do any good, but it was taken off. But following that story, we were going through Saipan, and we're about 2/3 of the way through, and I was in front of the group, and all of a sudden I looked out there, and there were 4 green uniforms laying on the ground. True story. And some machine gun fire coming off the right flank from some bushes and trees. And we stopped their line, and I said, give me cover, but it's coming from there. So the guys knew it too, and they start sending bullets and whatnot over there. So I ran out there, and there's a Marine with bars on his shoulder. I picked him up. He was wounded in the arm and leg. 2 other Marines grabbed the other guys, took them back, and I think 1 was dead, if I remember, and the other 3 were wounded. Never thought much about it. And later on in the operation, somebody came up to me and said, do you know who you picked up? And I said, no, Colonel Carson. I said, what do you mean, Colonel Carson? I didn't recognize him. And they said, well, and it's a story, it's in one of our books. He was a strange fellow. He had his ways, and during his career, he spent a lot of time in China. They had their groups over there, and he learned a lot of Chinese over there and stuff. And when he formed the Raiders, he designed it after their commander units over there. And he never gave liberty to the people there. Edison's Raiders, they got liberty and everything. There was two different types of things. But I thought it was interesting. Here, Carson, but he didn't stay with the division headquarters. He was exec officer there. But he took his group out, and what had happened, his radio man had got shot, and he went out to rescue him. But he was out scouting on his own. And it seemed strange, you know, but that was his nature. But that was one of the highlights of my career, I guess. And I'll regress another time. We were in Saipan, Tinian, this is written up. We'd advanced, and we came to a ridge at the end of the trees, cliffs and whatnot, and we stopped that night, and dug my foxhole, and I dug my own hole that day, and it was big enough for 2 or 3 people, a lot of room to stretch out and sleep. Slept there that morning, and mortar shells were dropping out there, and woke up, cleaned up, and a Jeep pulled up behind me. And I turned around, and I'll be damned, General Cates, Commandant of the 4th Marine Division, came Commandant of the Marine Corps, walked up and says, "How you doing, Marine?" I said, "Pretty good, General." He said, "Can I join you?" I said, "Sure, join me." In the meantime, we're sitting there talking, and I said, "You know, General, that Jeep bothers me." He said, "Why?" He said, "We're dropping mortar shells out of it." He's good thinking. He turned on, "Get that damn machine out of here." So he drove the Jeep away. And he said, "I'm going to tell you a story." He said, "I came up here because we're going to witness the dropping of a napalm bomb." Now, he said it was the first napalm bomb that was dropped. They developed the napalm bombs. And he said, "We're going to witness the first dropping of a napalm bomb." Now, in the story in Saipan, there is a little story that they did choose a napalm bomb over there. I don't know if it's true or not, but that was his version. So we sat there in the parapet. He gave me a lesson on the napalm bomb, how it was made, how it was put together, and how when it dropped, it's going to spread this stuff and it's going to burn. Well, we sat there, and about 10 minutes later, these Corsairs came here. I swear they were 7,500 feet above us, going across and then dropping it there. There's an autobiography, I read it one time. He sat there, was scared as hell because he thought the airplane was going to run into us.
Oh.
But that was another story that happened on Tinian. But back to Iwo. I just don't know how to describe Iwo. Everyone has their own thoughts on it. We were in the reserve there, our outfit. And of course, we remember Iwo because of the flag raising, Sirbachi. I'll start there. When you hit Saipan, we had the 4th Marine Division, and we had the 3rd and the 5th. But one division cut straight across Saibachi, and people don't realize, to the island rather, it only took 90 minutes. In 90 minutes, they were on the other side. Right. You had Saipan, it's shaped like a pork chop. The narrow part, they went across in 90 minutes, they cut it off. And of course, the mountain was here on the left. And of course, they had, I don't know if they say 50, 60 caves in there, and it was hollow and tunnels and whatnot. And they did a nice job. At that time, we were in the reserves, and we were called up immediately, because when you hit the beach, it was living hell. That's the only thing I could say. It was a different battle. And the other battles we were in, they were there to meet you. They didn't meet us. They let us in on the beach, because at the northern end of the island, all right, I'll start here. When you landed in ash, volcano ash, and you sank up to your calves and whatnot in it, and when you ran forward, you had a hole 10, 15 feet where your feet were. There was a terrace. We couldn't get over the terrace. But at the other end of the island, they had mortars, bazookas, rockets, and they had, I don't know what you want to call it, but they had what we call the ash can. It was about the half size of a regular American car. And when it screeched when it took off, and you could actually see it in the air coming. And when it landed, anything in 20 yards or 30 yards was dead. It just blew you apart. Well, that's what you ran into there. So we had to dig in, and you could see these things coming, and you'd run away from it if you could. Well, we lost 1,000 men that day right there by division. So we dug in that night. And then we had a terrace to get over. We got over the terrace, and there was airfield there, as I remember. Now, We turned to the right to go to the north end of the island. And I don't know how to explain this, but there were 400 pillboxes on that island, and there were 100 of them right there. And you can say, what do you do? Well, you can't go back, and you got to go forward. So what you're looking at, I always describe it like it's raining out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you have to go through. And you know you're going to get killed. It's either this phase again, kill or be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly the way it is. So I saw this in the paper the other day. Somebody's selling real estate. And I said, my God, it reminds me of Iwo Jima. There are 24 homes here. Visualize 100 of those like that, and they're all
Yep.
pillboxes.
Ah,
And just think of Iwo with 400 like that. So how do you get through that? That's the problem.
mm-hmm.
And there's only way to get through it because they're all intertwined. If you go to the flank, you're covered from that side. You go to that flank, you can hit that side. So it's just a wall of shells, bullets. So you have to take one out, and you take one out, and you lose 20, 30 guys. So if you take one out, you got a little break there. And that's what went on for the next 5 or 6 days. And as I say, there are 400 of those that by count, and you figure, well, here I'll give an example. Let's take 100 of those, 120 of them, and put them in the baseball field, football
Mhm.
field. That's exactly what my group faced. You had to get through them, and of course, I don't mind saying this, we landed with 229 men. We walked off with 27.
Mm.
Company G, my buddy, I'll tell you a story about him. He was Company G, they landed with 247, they walked off with 19. So that's what you went with. And of course, if your buddy got shot, you try to take care of him. And there are stories that his company commander will tell you that one. They charged the pillbox and he got hit. And he did what he could. He got the Congressional Medal of Honor. So here you got the guys that died, the guys that conquered it. And I'm not criticizing the captain, was right. But they got nothing but death. And those things always bothered me anyway. But we finally got through them. And now, here you have the ash, you got the mountain, and now my specific job, I became a runner. You couldn't scout there, there's nothing to scout, so technically you could be a scout. Well, the first instant we hit when we got in there, we turned toward the other end of the mountain. Now, you have sand and beach here, but I have a picture here. This is what the other end of the mountain looked like. Now you got mountains, you got crevices, you got rock, and under that, down below, there's 2 levels of concrete in a village for 22,000 men.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had a peek at one, there was a hospital place that had 400 beds in it.
Really?
400 beds. And they had a kitchen, you had barracks, and my buddies, the ones I meet with from Iwo, they sometimes say, when did you first see your Jap enemy? Now Sal, my best friend, he never saw one in the 9 days he was there before they took him out wounded, because they were hitting you with heavy artillery and all that stuff. Well,
Were there a lot of like spider holes
Yeah.
in that too?
so when we got through there, the other side of the island now, the highest point was this, I just showed you a picture, 382 feet they measured it. And in there are caves and crevices, and when you got in, you go 100 yards in, and they drop down. There was 3 stories. The engineers were fantastic. Kitchen facilities, sleeping facilities, and they're all intertwined all over the island, under the island itself. There's just a whole city. But I remember when we finally got off the airfield and we got to a place called the Amphitheater, and you had Turkey Ridge, and the big battles were going there, we were part of that. And in 382, the E Company, I guess it was, they tried to take that hill 4 days in a row. And what happened when you got up there, you made it, but you had to withdraw because all the troops came out from underneath at night and drove you off the hill. They tried 5 times, as I understand, and they lost just about everybody. So anyway, our outfit just got through fighting in the amphitheater, and our company commander's name was Walter Ridlin. He replaced my old commander, became the battalion commander now, Garrison. And we got to a place, the first time he called me up, well, first of all, we both jumped in a crater together, and our company was spread out. We'd lost maybe half of our company by then. He said, TJ, take a message back to Garrison, tell him where we are. In the meantime, check the left flank. So I ran off, and now you're running there, what do you do? You're just praying and running, dodging, do everything. And I got to the left, he said, check my left flank, and I did, there was nothing there. So I went down to the battalion, and again, it's late in the afternoon, and I gave the report to Garrison, and started back, and difficult, this mailman I talked to you about was there. We showed through the fat, and General came over and said, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting ready to go back. He said, where the hell are you going to go? It's dark out. So he kept me there that night. So I slept there with my friend difficult in the foxhole. The next morning I went back up and joined my company.
Okay,
And,
let me stop you there. I have to change.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. You were saying that the general kept you there overnight.
Yeah, he kept me there, and the next morning I became a runner between the general and my company commander, because before he sent I was going back, I remember he sent me off to the right flank to check on Company G. Company G took one hell of a battle. Before we went in, our commanding general mentioned the fact there was a quarry along there, and it would probably be the toughest place because they had to go in and climb the quarry.
Mm-hmm.
And they took one devil of a beating. As they say, 247 men, they came out with 19. But anyway, I had to go back up, deliver the message, and I was shifting from what's on my left flank, what's on my right flank, and delivering these messages. Unfortunately, I didn't get picked off. I did have a few, matter of fact, Difficult pointed out to me one time, he said, you got a bullet hole in your leg over here. You got one over your sleeve. I mean, evidently, you're so gross with survival, praying, worrying that
So it just caught the material and not you.
You know,
Wow.
really, I saved that jacket. But anyway, we got things fairly well under control after 10 days or so. But we spent 26 days on that island, Iwo. I did. And the Lord was good. I didn't get wounded at all. And most of my companies, let's say, we went in with 227, came out with 27, I guess.
Let me ask you something. You've probably seen the movie, the old John Wayne movie, The Sands of Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
How accurate was that?
I would say that it's about 90% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I know they used a lot of original film footage in that too.
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie. It was pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think what else to tell you about Iwo. Yeah, I can tell you about 382. 382 was the toughest battle going on. Now you had other division, you know, on the other side now, and they're taking the left side. We took the right side, and they had their problems, and I really don't know what they are because you live your own own battle. But after 5 attempts, I should say, the company E was just wiped out. I don't think there were 7 or 8 men left. And Ridlin, our company commander, was given the task to take that hill, and we took the hill that night. But what was taking place, and it happened to us, we got up to the top and fought our way up, and I showed you the picture of what it looked like, crevices and everything, and it rounded off. And called me in and says, go back and tell Garrison we're staying here. Coming out of high water. We're not retreating. So I delivered the message, went back up. And sure enough, that night, they came out of their hole. And of course, it's hard to describe that. It's like a movie, I suppose. People can't believe it or think you're lying. They came out of the ground, bullets flying, ran out of ammunition, using a rifle as a club, using your knives, just hand to head, you're standing back to back with your buddy. Mm-hmm. And of course, sometimes you don't even know it was your buddy, you almost kill him. But that's where you went all night long. So when it was over with, that was the key that broke the back for the whole island. And of course, we joined with the other Marine Division. Well, a mopping up procedure took place after that, and I was running up to here, there. I became attached to the battalion, as a runner. And, well, trying to get a group of 6 men over here to join a group over here, that was the thing, or find the officers. And of course, you lost a hell of a lot of officers. But on the story after that, when we left the United States, these buddies I was with, Simmons, I mentioned his name, Aldo, he goes wounded in Saipan, he wasn't there. Baker, who was with us, he was killed on Iwo Jima. When I got back from one of my running assignments, gang came over and told me that Baker was killed. And the other fellow who was with us was named Massey. And I tried to find him after the war. When we were going to Iwo Jima, the word was we were going to spend about 7 to 10 days there. And then we're going on to Okinawa. And of course we didn't go, we didn't make it there, but he didn't leave with us from the States, this fellow Massey. And when I was on Iwo, I was out running someplace, and I came back, and one of my buddies told me, there's a fellow named Massey looking for you. And he was on the way to the next operation. So I missed him by 10 minutes, they say. It's been nice to see him. But it was just like I say, it was mopping up and getting in those caves and sealing caves. They pulled us off, with 26 days ours. It went on about 30 some more days, I mean, another 10, 15 days mopping up. They sent us back to Maui. Some of my friends, like, well, Sal, he would get a good interview on him if we could get him together. He remembers being hit, and they couldn't get him out. And he tells this story. They had a tank come up. The tank went over the top of him, and of course, they had a trapdoor in the tank. They lowered the trapdoor, pulled him in, and took him back to the beach. And he said he laid there, and all he could see for a whole mile on each side of him, ponchos, dead Marines, live Marines, and they couldn't get them off because as the landing craft came in, they were shooting there, and there were ships all over the harbor, dismantled. So it took a long time out.
Now, what's his name?
Sal Familero.
Okay.
And but he remembers it vividly, and he tells you how scared he was, and he was. We all were scared. But we went back to Maui, and we were getting ready to invade Japan. I remember the train, and we wasn't right. I don't know how the other Marines felt, but our group felt bad about this, and maybe it's just ego. We were doing a job, but we never got the rank. Let me put it that way. For example, you're a squad leader. A platoon is made up of 3 squads and 4 groups of 12 men. And you're a group leader, you're a corporal. If you're a squad leader, you're a sergeant. And you were doing those jobs, and your buddies were being killed. And all of a sudden, you need replacements, and they're replacing them with, guard duty Marines. They ship them over, and they got the rank, so they take over. You had to train them to do the job, but they had the rate.
Oh.
And, well, like lots of times, some of the guys would be griping about it. And we talked to our company commander about it a couple of times, some of the fellows. I'm a squad leader, I don't get my sergeant stripes. And he said point blank, he says, we're under the Navy, we don't have the rate, they don't have the money to give us a rate, so we can't do anything. You're an acting sergeant, you're an acting corporal, whatever you are. And that's true. That's what happened in a lot of the divisions, because the rates and the money wasn't there for us. But old Sal, he was flown back to San Diego, and he's very proud of the fact that he survived like they all were. But while we were training, got called together one day, and God bless him, there was Clifton Gates, our general. And he made a speech. Matter of fact, I don't have it, but I have the speech he gave, a copy of it. Now, I don't know where I got all this stuff from, but I love getting it. I got his original speech before we went into Iwo. And at the top of it, he had written in his handwriting, do not let this out. It'll be delivered verbally. And his whole speech about how we're going to hit Iwo Jima and whatnot. I got a copy of that, and I meant to bring that. And he got us together and said, you boys that were at Iwo Jima
we'll never see battle again. And we couldn't figure it out. So I guess he had enough pull because after they was going to be concomitant. But those of us that were still alive were pulled out and sent to Pearl Harbor. And some went up to a place called Ania Heights where the airfield was. I was assigned to Pearl City. And when you went into Pearl Harbor, there was Ford Island in the middle. And you checked in there. But Pearl City was where all the aircraft carriers pulled in. And when they pulled in and docked, they had all the supplies, food, everything else. Well, the detachment there was in charge of that. Well, I relieved the sergeant of the guard there, and everybody there was sent to our division to replace us. So we're doing guard duty there, and of course on the other side of the war, they had docks there, and they might have had 10, 15 buildings, I mean big warehouses. They were manned by waves doing the work in those days. And then we had a guard. My detachment had to guard the Waves barracks to keep the Marines and Navy out of them. So that was a side issue there. But it was interesting doing that work for a while. And I remember sitting down to breakfast. I posted the guard. I had a truck and I drove it, delivering all the gates and everything else. And sat down to my first breakfast. And I looked at a young Marine walked over and said, "What's up?" He's, "I'm the orderly. I've got to take your food order." We didn't do that where I came from. So I said, "Let's see what you got." And he had a menu. I said, "I'll take one of everything." He laughed. I said, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "Everybody, 15 guys that came over from Maui said the same damn thing." So I sat there, and it's true. A week later, I'm driving around, and I stopped at the warehouse, a little wave there, and I said, "You know, I need a new set of clothes." Well, she said, "Marine clothes are over in the Navy, Army, everything." So I drove over and picked a new set of sea bag full of clothes, went in. About a week later and a half, I said to her, "I need some more clothes." Same girl. I got a new set of clothes. When the war ended, I weighed 228 pounds. I gained, in the time I was there, from 120 to 228.
Wow.
Just a big rolling pulley. But then the war ended. I remember doing guard duties, placing the boys, and whistles blowing off, and they dropped the bomb.
What was that like when you heard that the war was
Everybody
over?
was screaming and shouting and everything else, and happy that it was over. And 2 days later, we got a call, we're going back to Maui. So we pulled all the Iwo Jima boys, 4th Division back, and wondered what was going on. But he had a lot of pull gates. He commandeered, or he got a carrier, I remember, ATTU, ATTU, going back to the United States. We were the first Marines out of the Pacific. So they sent us back to San Diego. And,
What was that like when you hit the United States?
oh, it was something else. We hit San Diego and see the United States and celebrate. As a matter of fact, I had, after I joined, my cousin joined, another cousin joined, and my brother joined. And 2 of them were girls, 2 were boys. One was a wave, one was a Marine. And one was a Marine in San Diego. I got to see her on the way home. It was emotion like it is now. But it was something else. Took the train, and they had a train. That was another thing. Did a special train for us, go straight across the United States. So the general did a good job. I was discharged from Bainbridge, Maryland. We were out of there so fast. They did a checkup. I still got my discharge paper here. They checked my back, my leg, and whatever.
And so you were discharged in, let's see, 25 October 1945.
Yeah, that's right.
You went back home to Schenectady.
Right. And then I went to work again at the local.
Now, did you go to work right away, or did you
No,
take
I
some?
laid around for a little while.
Did you join that 5220
Yeah, I was just
club?
going to say, join the 5220 club.
Okay.
And my girlfriend in high school waited for me.
We got married.
Oh.
And I went back to work at the American Locomotive Company and was there for a while. And then I was going to go out to the University of Notre Dame, and they didn't take married students. They had St. Mary's for women on one side of this road. And about 2 years later, I guess they started taking married students. We got all the big football heroes, Johnny Lou Jacks and people like that. But I wrote a letter to different colleges and the University of Miami, wrote back unconditionally accepted, went down and made the football team, and got hurt one time where I got hit in the back and hurt like hell. and decided, is this worse than a married man? And I said, oh, hell with it. So I spent all my time taking college credits. When we were in a football team, they wouldn't let you take over 13 credits because you were killing your time. Well, I decided to take credits, and God bless my wife, she helped me. But I took 20, 25 credits, got the handbook out. They had night classes. I took night classes. I had Saturday classes. In college, you had Monday and Wednesday classes, Tuesday and Thursday classes. I even ended up, I hate to say it, I ended up taking a ballet class one time to get the credits. So in 22 months, I got my fourth degree,
Wow.
college degree, and they weren't going to let me graduate because they didn't have residence.
Now let me ask you this, with that GI Bill, do you think you would have gone on to college had it not been for that?
Well, I would have tried, but of course my family didn't have the money to send me, and I don't think we would have gone. I mean, I think the GIs got a good deal there. I would have tried to pick up I had a scholarship to college, but at that time, I don't think they would have picked it up for me. And then I would have had to work and save, or my wife would have put me through school. But no, I don't know, I guess 70% of us, I don't think would have gone through college without that. That was a good benefit they had. That was a good experience. And after getting my Bachelor of Education degree, I got a job. And it was an interesting experience as far as that goes, not with the war, but I worked hard at it. I was a coach, coached track and basketball, and out in the sun a lot, and then I got promoted to Dean of Boys, assistant principal, and I became a director of schools in the south end of the county, and that was about 20 miles from my house, the other end of Miami, Florida, all the way down toward the Keys. And there are 58 schools there that I administered to.
Now, how much time did you spend in Florida?
Well, I went down in 1945 and retired, let's see, 42 years later. So I spent 42 years in the school system.
Down in Florida.
Yeah, Miami, Florida.
And what brought you back to...
Well, you know, when I went to Florida first, there was only 150-some thousand people there. And it grew and grew and grew. And of course, the Cuban invasion came in too at that time. And that was another story. We owned some property up in Sacandaga Camp. We'd come up in the summertime.
Yep.
Well, as I got older in the system, and instead of 6 weeks off, a month off, I ended up getting 2 weeks off, so we finally sold the place. But interesting story, I was up in the lake fishing with my assistant principal one day, and in the water, you can hear people talk. And the state trooper pulled in. We had 200 feet in the water, and I heard him talk, and I said, geez, Bruce, we better get in, because he's asking about me. So I went in, and the trooper and my wife said, Connie, she said, he says he has a message from Mrs. Smith. She looked at me strange, and Bruce is laughing, my assistant principal. And I said, what's the message? He said to get home right now, they're going to integrate the school system. It was not integrated at that time. So Bruce is laughing. My wife says, what are you laughing at? He says, this superintendent's secretary's name is Mrs. Smith. So my wife thought I had something going maybe on the side, but he said Mrs. Smith. So anyway, I had to get back that day, and we had a meeting as principal of the school, and I had a junior high school, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And the federal judge just today was a fraternity brother of mine, and he asked me many times about the integration. And Super said, how are we going to do this? It's Friday, and we have to open school Monday. And we have to have it done by federal court order. And of course we argued, why did it take so long? But so we came up with the idea, why don't we take 3 schools, make this one a 7th grade one, this one an 8th grade one, and 9th grade, that we could transfer them all. But how do you schedule them? So incidentally, the secretary there, his name was Sharkey. And I asked her, I just got the job 2 years before. It turned out her family was raised in Schenectady. They had a family here, my name was Sharkey, Ray Sharkey, Don Sharkey. And they were quite the athletes. One of the brothers was a pro basketball player. And they all went to North Terrace High School. So anyway, I said, Connie, I need help. So let's call these people. I got about a half dozen teachers in, went to a blackboard and showed them how to schedule the kids. So, okay. Now, prior to that, I had a school called Robert E. Lee Junior High School. And it was in the fringe of Miami. Now it's segregated. On 20th Street to 36th Street was all black people, Negroes. They were all right. One section were a lot of Puerto Ricans and Cubans. Another section was a white. They went to Crossroads. And in that school, they all went to. And they never made publicity about it. Well, they had a lot of problems there. And of course, my assignments, having been a Marine, they sent me to all these places. But we got ordered pretty quickly, we'll say that. And I want to inject this here if you're taping it. In those days, we didn't have much, we had trouble in schools, but it didn't last very long. And the state law in Florida at that time said, the principal is in charge of students. He shall use corporal punishment or whatever he needs to control the students. Well, regardless of what went on there, we had very few problems in Florida because the principals used the board. And of course, today one parent complains, it's inhumane. So, and also another part of the system was, if you were truant in the juveniles, we had 2 homes, the schools in one end of the county, and a judge, juvenile judge. So if a kid did something wrong, you took him to the juvenile court, and he sentenced them to those schools. They barbed wire fences, they got them up at 6, made them clean up, march them to class, march them back to class, feed them, march them to the cafeteria. They got 3 months to 6 months. Well, it's a different world today. And but that was part of the thing.
Now, did you join any veterans organizations?
Well, I belonged to them all, but as an honorary member. I like New York, I belonged to American Legion, but at large. Same with the Veterans Foreign War and Marine League and whatnot. I just didn't have time to attend the meetings along the KFC.
Now, what about reunions? Did you?
Yeah, they had a 4th Marine reunion, for many years, and I attended a half a dozen of them and see some of my buddies. But it's gotten so now that so few of them, they don't have our group anymore. But I noticed in the veterans magazines they do have reunions. But a fellow in the South, he was a bugler in our company, and he survived the war. He used to handle them and do the planning, but he eventually gave up on it. So the last one I remember about 5 years ago. Well, while we're in Florida, at our age, my wife and I were in the 80s, low 80s, and decided, well, we were here, we retired, and we enjoyed Florida. We did where we lived. It was nice and warm and comfortable. And decided, well, at our age, the family plot is up here in Schenectady. We have a grave marker there. So why don't we just go up there and finish our years here? So we decided to come up here and decided to settle in Glenville. So we picked up, my brother lives there. He was in his Patton's Army. So we had relatives, and she had 2 aunts here, so we managed to, have some family. And it's been pleasant. I miss Florida, to be honest with you. I love the hot weather, not the cold weather. Trying to see if anything else I can tell you about what took place to us.
Now, did you have any other photos there?
Well, let me see. I usually carry, these are the 27 guys that were the original bunch of the 4th Marine Division. That you can't take.
Yeah, I'll take, if you don't mind, I'll just take all of that and...
This I'm proud of, and as I say, when I wrote my memoirs, and
I get emotional about it, but my dad always wanted to know what happened. When I got home from the service, he said, let's see it. That's what he wanted to see. And we didn't talk about it. And, I never talked because I wrote my memoirs. And I sent a copy to my commanding general now, General Garrison. He sent this back here, and he basically he said he was sorry about being tired and answering me, and he remembered me very well. And Kotick, he remembered Kotick, and talked about some of our common friends. And then he did write, he said, I would like to have you send this to the Marine Corps for a historical center. And I did send the memoirs in. And I got a letter from them thanking me, and they eventually transferred to the Marine Corps down to Quantico.
Oh, very nice.
And then one sentence here, I really appreciate it. There weren't many Marines who had as much frontline duty as you did. I'm certainly proud of the company of the entire 2nd Battalion. It was a gung-ho outfit, it was gung-ho. But that meant more to me than anything else. I guess I did have more frontline duties because I never lost any time and whatnot. But that was pretty nice to me. This It was just my discharge paper saying I was shot in the right thigh, left arm, back in 1944. But it was just stuff I had on the desk and I grabbed it on the way out. One thing I know I tell my story now and then some people ask about it. And a little article here. On January 27th, the Navy leadership, undoubtedly in response to political pressure, directed the Pacific put together a commando-type unit, the 2nd Separate Battalion, officially came to life in February the 4th. So that's when Carlson later started. And I have here in my papers the jacket. They have the jacket on it like up. And this one says caution on it. Assigned to 2nd Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion. So I outlined that and it tells you the times I was wounded and whatnot.
Okay.
So
Yeah, if we can make copies of all that, we'd love to do that.
do that.
Okay.
I only have one copy of my memoirs left, and everybody's asked me to get the book, get it published, and I just haven't had the desire to do it. But if I duplicate it, I'll send a copy.
Okay.
I'll get you a copy.
All right.
But this is stuff I don't know if you want to take pictures of.
Well, thank you so much for your interview.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's good to get it out. I got emotional about it.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, sir.
I thank you very much, Wayne. I appreciate it.